We also have the director of episodes 4 and 7, Lake Bell. Writer and executive producer, D.V. De Vincentis. Director of episode 6, Hannah Fidel. We have the series executive producer. He also plays Rand Gautier. Please welcome Seth Rogen. An actor who I've been fortunate enough to see her on stage. She is always so phenomenal, but she completely transforms herself for this role. Please welcome Lily James. Another fantastic actor who took on the epic task of playing Tommy Lee. Please welcome Sebastian Stan. The director of episodes 5 and 8, the finale you just saw. Please welcome director Gwyneth Horder-Payton. And finally, none of this would have happened without executive producer Sue Nagel. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm afraid we're out of time at this point. No, I'm so happy you're all here. Congratulations on such a really beautiful and sensitive look at this story that I really only thought I knew. I'd actually love to start with the actors because these events took place in the 90s. Lily, I'm not even sure if you were alive then. I don't know, what was your knowledge of Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee and this whole event? Were you familiar with it at all?
Yeah, I mean, mainly just with Pamela and Baywatch and just being kind of like, whoa, it's Pamela. I kind of knew of it, but like what was so fascinating about this whole thing was learning this whole untold story. And so reading these scripts was such a kind of punch in the gut when you realize how you've overlooked something and I was quite young when the actual tape happened, so I don't remember it that vividly, but all these sorts of things, you sort of realize how we've overlooked stuff. Mm-hmm. So it feels... The scripts were great.
So in some ways, you got to know the real story before the story we all kind of learned, which wasn't the real story.
Right. I mean, yeah. Yeah, we're looking at all these things as reckonings.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the same thing when we look at what happened with Britney Spears and everything, and it's sort of so disheartening and so important to look at it and explore it and sort of our own culpability. I don't know if I'm repeating myself now, but it is so important. I care about it so much, and I just hope that the show kind of provokes a conversation about all of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Sebastian, you infamously played Jeff Gillooly in I, Tonya, and I remember you weren't that familiar with those events. Were you a little more, yeah, sure. Were you a little more familiar with the Pam and Tommy story?
Well, I mean, again, I just came to America in '95 and I was 12, and then I didn't really so I wasn't around for the event itself, but I remember hearing whispers about it, and again, for me it was just how much I didn't know about the story. Like ultimately, it just, you know, I had no, especially that they had nothing to do with it, and the invasion of it all. So that was a discovery, but yeah.
And Seth, I'm guessing you probably didn't know Rand Gautier's name, but were you familiar with the story?
I was familiar with the tape. I was, I think 12 or 13 when it came out. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia, so there was a hometown connection, I guess you would say. But no, honestly, it was. That was what the show is based on a Rolling Stone article, and I remember reading the article and really realizing that I knew nothing about this thing that I had experienced as a very young man, and kind of, I think, as a young man, created my own kind of fantastical narrative for how this thing came to be, and then learning the real story, I was like, oh, that's not at all what I had projected happened, and in a way it was representative, I think, of a lot of things from my personal past where I failed to understand the true context of a thing I had absorbed culturally, and so yeah, it was really interesting to explore the story behind this thing that I kind of like made up a story that was not at all real.
Yeah, I think a lot of us did. I'm curious, when the project found its way to you, were you interested primarily as a producer, or did you always know you were going to be in it?
Oh, no, I never necessarily expect to impose my acting on anything. It had come up. Yeah, the idea of playing Rand was something that we had talked about, but that was, that came a long way after. We had been working on it for years, but before that really came into practice, you know what I mean? I guess I was happy to play Rand. He's not the best guy in the world, but it was... It was an interesting challenge. Yeah.
And so, Sue, for you, how did the project sort of find its way to you, and what made you realize that it could be a miniseries? It's such a great article, but that doesn't always translate to film.
Well, we have a long relationship with Point Grey, obviously Sausage Party, and we've all known each other a really long time as well. So this really came out of a conversation we were having about finding ways of working together. And this is an article that they had optioned, and we looked at it, and of course, the biggest beats are he did what? To make himself look like a sheepdog. He lifted this safe by himself. Like, this is crazy. Just the dumb crime of it all is fascinating. But obviously, that's not really enough for a show, nor should it be, right? But I think there was a way in. I felt living in now we're in 2022, but when we started this, it was a few years ago. There was a way of looking at where we are now, how we treat women, how we treat celebrities. Is there, have things changed? Have they changed enough yet? Is there a way for us to have some kind of commentary, while also having a good time and not finger wagging at the audience, but instead trying to encourage everyone to have a conversation about it. So and then the harder, longer thinking started, and it took a few years to kind of get it right. I mean, we are in a time now where there's a lot of true stories based on, true stories or miniseries based on true stories, but we couldn't have imagined that or anticipated that when we started this. It was just a story that was compelling, and then the talent that was involved is undeniable.
One of those great true stories, DV, you were involved with, obviously with American Crime Story, and I don't think I'm the lone person to see comparisons between Pamela Anderson and Marcia Clark. I'm curious, how did this project come to you, and what made you want to be a part of it?
Actually, this, the pilot script was sent to me, and I read it, and I thought it was just completely extraordinary, and it was so much what I like to think that I am what I like to think that I make, and that I write, in that it was tantalizing and fun, but it was also, you could feel that it was really about something else entirely underneath it, and which was certainly the case with OJ. And I love things that function on those two levels, something that's really inviting and fun and enjoyable, because Rob and I both, we write we write to make ourselves laugh, I think. I don't think we can really, either one of us can really write for very long without putting a joke in or whatever, but it also has to be about something. And so I could immediately see all of the ramifications and implications in this story, and the more I looked into it, the more shocked I was. And I remember being really surprised back in the day when it happened. I remember it being really shocking. And it's not shocking anymore when this kind of thing happens, but it really was then. So I dove right in with Rob and loved it.
Rob, where did you even begin? There's so much, and this is one of those cases where truth is stranger than fiction. Were there things that you wanted to include but you couldn't because they were so crazy, or they just didn't fit with the story?
No, I think we covered it all. It was an 8, I did some quick math. It was a Rolling Stone article. I think it was a 7 or 8 page article, and I thought 7 pages, 8 hours of television. I was a little nervous, but it just kept, somehow those 7 pages just kept feeding hour after hour after hour. And we you know, you always have to make up some things, and we really made up remarkably little. Even the things that seem made up were not made up. You know, the Butchie and the mobsters and the hits and the sheepdog and buying the yak fur rug at Pier 1 Imports. I mean, you know.
It's crazy because after I would watch an episode, I would go online to be like, well, what parts did they make up? And it was nothing, really.
Yeah, it's kind of a documentary.
Although it must be said that we have always been suspicious of the veracity of Rand Gautier's storytelling.
Although we've recently learned that we did make up everything. Rand has since come out and said that.
Oh, has he?
Yeah. What he said he made up.
He
He's
sort
denied
of
it all.
disavowed a lot of it, but again, that's just such a Rand move.
Yes. He's a reliable source.
You know.
Yeah. Lily and Sebastian, so much has been made, and rightfully so, of how you disappear into these roles. That's you guys. I kind of can't believe that. But it transcends just physical imitation. You really create these complex, sympathetic, soulful characters. I do want to talk about the physical transformation, but I want to start with the research. Where did you even begin in getting their mannerisms, their voices, the way they walk, even?
I mean, we spent a long time watching them. I think that both of us worked so hard and really, really wanted to do them justice and be good custodians of them, and watched YouTube endlessly. I can sort of mimic along to all her interviews, and then the hair and makeup and Cami and David and Barry Lee Moe and the guys that transformed us in the prosthetic team. I mean, they were insanely talented. Blew us away.
Cami, also.
Cami's hair.
Costumes.
When you walk into a fitting and you just you're like, oh, now it makes sense. Now I can do it. It gives you the confidence to go out there. And
I think it was the camera test when we finally actually put the tattoos, everything, the wig, and then the costumes, and we looked at each other being like, oh, yeah, cool. We're maybe gonna be okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sebastian, you don't have any tattoos.
Not yet, no.
You gonna get the mayhem on the stomach? Start with that.
Something with an M.
What was that process like? Because it all looks so realistic.
the whole thing, it was long, wasn't it?
What was it like at 4 a.m.,
Yeah,
Lily?
the 3:30 alarm clock was but but it was amazing. Actually, I was listening to music from the 90s or watching interviews of Pamela, and it was a really amazing way to of meditation almost into the day, because it was such a huge challenge every day. So to have that time, even if it was 4 hours to sort of prep, I really needed it. How about you?
Oh, yeah, it was what it was, I guess. We just showed up.
It's vegetable ink of some kind, isn't it? The tattoos. So they lasted a few days, or
They did, yeah. About 3 days, yeah, and then they had to be reapplied.
every 3 days.
Yeah, But it's interesting walking through East LA with tattoos. I feel good about it.
I had the prosthetic forehead, so I had to make it work, I had bleached eyebrows underneath, so I walked around with no eyebrows, looking like a complete lunatic the whole job. Orange with fake.
And yet you're in LA, so you blend right in. It's fine. Seth,
Sometimes I would see Lily mid-transformation, and I felt like I was seeing something I should be
Yeah, it was
seeing.
wrong.
I was like, she'd be like, hi. I'm like, we shouldn't talk now.
I'm so curious about the casting process, because how did you, I guess this is for Robert maybe, how did you sort of know that this casting would work? Was there any kind of a chemistry read with Lily and Sebastian?
None whatsoever. Wow. You can't, they're big stars. You can't ask. These guys don't audition. No, the whole thing was kind of a gigantic leap of faith, I guess.
Wow.
But, we all felt very, very confident that they were the right people for it.
Was there something you had seen specifically that made... Sebastian, has anyone ever told you look like Tommy Lee? Because now I can't unsee it.
No. The answer is no.
Well, I'm here to tell you
People tell me I look like Pamela all the time.
every day. I get it.
They both had to get the opposite contacts. Like he had to get
Really?
he had to get brown ones, she had to get blue ones.
Oh my God, that's so funny. And Seth, for you, Rand is obviously not recognizable. So you didn't have to
No.
worry about the physical transformation.
I do look just so you know,
Do you
I look
really?
exactly like him, and it is a remarkable transformation. It is shocking how well I did in emulating this man. You don't know that, so you'll have to take my word for it. But if you did, you'd be like, oh my fuck, oh wow. He nailed it.
But this is a character who's not easy to understand, and
No.
he's not one-dimensional in this. He's very. I find him very sympathetic. Sorry,
Yeah.
in many places. What was sort of your approach to him?
Honestly, my approach, I viewed him as someone who put no thought into his actions. And my approach was I'd say it was a reductive thing where I tried to stop myself from physically doing anything a person normally does when they are portraying the fact that they're thinking. They kind of furrow their brow. They kind of give quizzical look. I just tried to not do any of that. I tried to, I tried to portray someone who was not thinking very much, who truly was not thinking about their actions, what they were doing, who had a very simple outlook that they were, if there was a mantra in my head that I was always repeating, it was, why is this happening to me? And in my head, that's all the character was ever thinking, really, is why is this happening to me? And all of his actions were viewed through that lens, and it's my instinct to portray thought generally as an actor, and that was something that Craig, the director of the first few episodes, really I asked him to be hard on me for, and he was. And I was like, I never want to seem like I'm thinking that hard about anything. And every once in a while he'd be like, you're kind of furrowing your brow like you're thinking. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. And so it was weird. It was counterintuitive in a lot of ways, but I think it turned out well. So yeah, I was happy with it. And it is exactly dead on to Rand. Honestly, I don't know if that's true. Yeah.
No, Rand even says in this episode he doesn't understand why bad things happen to him.
No, he's a dumb. He doesn't think. He's not a smart man.
I was Sue and DV and Robert. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about the decision to craft this show. With a lot being from Rand's perspective. Also telling sort of Pamela's upbringing. There's a lot of ground that you cover, and it's so sprawling and fascinating. Was that the intention from the start?
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm just saying, I thought Rob Siegel immediately when we finally pulled the deal together. I was just a huge fan of his work. I love what he did with The Wrestler. I love the movie. Big fan. I just love how he crafts
Big
underdogs.
fan.
And yeah.
Sorry.
And he finds real humanity in people.
Yeah.
So that's one of the pieces that I thought we needed to start with if we were starting in Rand's perspective. Was you had to have empathy and humanity. Bring a humanity to kind of, whether or not he's thinking, he's trying to lead with his heart, as misguided as it is.
Yeah, he really has a vested interest in what the right thing is. Like the way I always looked at it was, this is a person who wants the world to function the way it's supposed to function, and is constantly frustrated with it not functioning that way. And it's sort of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Like the more he tries to impose what he thinks is the right way things should go and create retribution and create consequences for other people, the worse he makes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned, or Seth mentioned, Craig Gillespie, who I know directed the first 3 episodes, and then the rest of the series was directed by these amazing women we have today. On International Women's Day, no less. Yeah, today. I'm curious, for the directors, what drew you to the project, and did you know which episodes in advance you'd be directing, or did you get to sort of have a say in it? Were there ones you personally responded to? Let's start with Lake.
I think I think when we first initially talked about it, it was always that I was doing 4 and 7, and I was grateful for that. You know, I think 4 is quite pivotal in this woman's journey, and I felt it was very personal. You know, I loved the way that this narrative is sort of crafted as such that it's almost like a Trojan horse. Like you think, you know, you're in 1 to 3, and you're feeling like, okay, so this is the journey I'm on. Here's the sort of like twinkling pop light that I get to kind of go on, and then all of a sudden, you're sort of jostled into reality. And I really connected to that from my own experiences in life, and feeling that sense of sort of unbridled exploitation of a woman who has dared to pose on the cover of a magazine naked. Like somehow those rights, I remember those words so poignantly, that those rights, you know, rights don't matter to you because you're deemed a slut, or you've been put out there in that way. And that felt very personal to me. So I felt like, you know, episode 4 particularly, sure, we can kind of Trojan horse with some comedy and ambiguity of like who's the villain and who's not, you know, and then ultimately it was really kind of an exciting thing to kind of take on, you know.
I'm curious for the actors, knowing that Lake is a fantastic actress in and of herself. Is it different when you're being directed by an actor? Do you find that, you know, they understand things sometimes that maybe other directors don't understand as well?
I mean, 100%. I mean, I think it helps to have somebody on both sides of the camera always. I mean, especially because it's always about trust. It's a trust thing that you have to, you know, at the end of the day have, I feel like. But we did, and she helped make us, she made us laugh when we were scared.
I speak actor, so, you know, they can't get away with bullshit. Because I'm like, I know where you are right now.
You
know?
felt our pain. And
Yeah.
they came in with like the most energy, and it felt like, for me, I was like, oh, it felt like to be like seen and heard by her, and to have her there in those episodes, it was like, and the same with like both of these amazing women. It was like, whew, it felt so empowering and inspiring and so necessary, and I'm so grateful to them for that.
Hannah, you directed episode 6, Pamela in Wonderland, which is kind of a bottle episode. We really learn her backstory. What was it like to come into this and do an episode solely focused on Pam?
It was amazing. I personally feel like my taste veers towards women scorned. And so anytime I'm given an opportunity to give a voice to a woman that we might not understand, I think it's a task worth doing. So I was really excited when I think I was sent the first 6 scripts, and I read them, and I read 6 and was like, that's the one. Really? That's the one for me. And it was just a side note, Lily and I started talking about it like right when you guys start shooting. And we always knew that it was going to feel different, be different, and it was just a really great experience.
Robert and DV, did you, sure, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna step on someone's applause. Did you know from the start that you wanted to do an episode solely focused on Pamela?
Yeah, that was always part of it, and that's in the original Rolling Stone article. I mean, we didn't set out to do an episode about just Pamela for the sake of it, but we knew we wanted to do that deposition. That deposition very much felt like such an important part of the overall story, and it just worked, I thought, really well as a bottle episode.
I'm so glad you said bottle episode, because I was like, maybe writers don't like that, but
No, it's great. It's really.
okay.
But yeah, it was a great framework. The deposition. When we actually looked at the deposition and looked at these questions that were being asked, because they can ask anything they want in deposition. Yeah. There's no judge to say no, and they fucking go for it, and it's awful, and it's barbaric, and so disturbing, and it reminded me a lot of things that Marsha Clark went through, actually.
Yeah.
and it was a great framework to allow her to travel through time and for us to see parts of her life where she experienced this kind of, not so explicit assault, but this kind of emotional assault in her life.
Absolutely.
That we know of, anyway.
Yeah. And Gwyneth, for you, what was it like to, shoot this very pivotal episode with episode 5, and then come back and do the finale? I mean, no pressure, but this is the one that brings everything together.
Well, we shot them at the same time.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's always a challenge, especially for the actors. So by the time I came in, though, I actually don't know Sebastian and Lily, because I don't even recognize them, because I never saw them as themselves. So by the time I came in, they were they'd already been deeply, obviously, into their characters, but I came in, a little later, deeply into their characters. And for me, I just knew that that they had done so much work and so much research, and they were so committed in doing right by the characters and honoring really who they were. And I had to stand back a little bit and let them take it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you knew Seth, right?
Seth? No, I don't know Seth.
She knew Rand Gautier as I went by on set exclusively. Yeah.
I was working with somebody who wasn't thinking, and it was confusing to me.
Exactly, yeah, it was a lot.
I couldn't give notes because he didn't understand them.
There was nothing there.
I'm curious, and forgive me if this is an obvious question, but the directors, do you consult with one another about what's going on and trade notes? Or, I know that things are sort of established, probably largely by Robert, but also as the directors, do you talk to one another?
We definitely all
did.
talked.
I mean, we did a little talking.
We did some talking.
Yeah, I mean, also Craig sort of set the tone, right? So it's like Craig sort of set the tone of the visuals and kind of like what kind of frickin' ride we were going to go on. And then we got to kind of go in and have our sort of interpretations of each nugget of the chapters, But yeah, I definitely feel like, it's like, so, does Lily like it when you say a note before or after take one? No notes straight away. I'm like, just no notes.
No, I love notes. I do, just not straight away.
No, I know, not straight away. No, but it's like, you have those things, and like as actor, I was kind of like, I hope that, you want that information, It's like, you want to say like, okay, sometimes we would have things where we had one set, so we had to kind of like work together on a day where we'd be like, okay, so we're at the stands, at the football game. We gotta both shoot on that day.
It's also so fun to see other people direct, because as a director, you're normally siloed and you don't get to see how other people work, and it's just a treat.
There was one special day I remember when Lake was over at the. Who directed? I'm sorry, the Playboy Mansion.
Here we go.
We had the Playboy Mansion.
My name's Lake Bell.
We had two directors going at once.
It was
on
me
opposite
and
sides
Gwyneth.
of the street. On one side of the street was the Playboy Mansion, and on the other, that was Hannah directing the Playboy Mansion, and on the other side of the street simultaneously was the Penthouse Mansion. And
Rob and I were just running back and forth.
We were running back and forth between Hugh Hefner and Bob Guccione.
All day.
Playboy Penthouse the whole day.
What is it like for you, the actors? Because, I assumed you didn't shoot chronologically, but I didn't know you were shooting like 5 and 8 together. You're really jumping all over the place. How do you keep track? Rand doesn't have to because he's not thinking.
No.
But
I do what they tell me. Yeah. It's not that of all the challenges a human faces throughout their life, that is not an insurmountable one, I would say. You're like, oh, this is the 5th episode. Okay, I'm here. And you hopefully have a sense of the overall story. As actors, you're used to shooting things out of order. Generally, films are shot out of order completely. So yeah, it's not.
It's also the director. I would say that it's a huge responsibility as a director. We have to kind of be like, okay, so remember, this is where you're coming from.
Yeah, they frame it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully we support in that way.
Yeah. I could tell by what size bump I had. That was it, really.
wow.
Belly bump.
It's so interesting because this show, it works so well first as like a heist thriller, and then actually a romance that I get really invested in, and then the social critique of it all. I'm curious how you kept all those tones balanced. Was it in the writing? Was it in the scripts? Or sometimes that's found in the editing room?
It was all of the above, right?
Did we keep them balanced?
Exactly.
1,000%.
I would like to give credit to the scripts because they were amazing. And what you see on screen was on the page. And you know, for us, I feel like as actors, I mean, you know, it's a map that you follow, and the rhythm, the inflection of the words, the sentences, the way that we were speaking, like it was in there. You didn't have to ad-lib anything. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to follow the thing, and then we were extremely supported. Like you were asking about what is it like with, this was one of those things where the collaboration was like extreme high, like on all levels. And again, like it doesn't always happen. Everybody on here knows, like it doesn't, you just don't get lucky that way from a producerial level all the way to, you know, everybody that's there. So, but it always starts with the scripts, I think. I mean,
Sue, I want to ask you as a producer, because this is epic. This is 8 hours, 8 episodes, and it's a period piece. So much is happening. What for you was the most challenging part of getting this series made?
I think that we all shared in the challenges, and you know, we've touched on some of them. I think one of the things that the writers did, which was so smart, and it's essential for the actors, for the editors, for everyone, and the directors, is to have the scripts done ahead of time. So when Sebastian's talking about following a map, and Lily has the benefit of coming in to start a part where she knows where it's going, she knows where the journey's going, and that just helps her prepare. And so I think the work that the writers did in the writers' room, and they really were in there for 20 weeks, and thinking about the tone and trying to get it right, and it's a real careful calibration. And of course, editing helps too, and what the directors bring to it, and all of the actors. But I think to get this tone as perfect as I think it is, it's all in preparation, and it's a lot of talking and thinking, and that starts, you know, that's everybody on this panel. Like Seth comes into it from the second, you know, that Point Grey had optioned the article, knew exactly kind of the tone and how to start it and what it was really about. So we all had a North Star, but those scripts in the writer's room really gave us, you know, the map.
And we owe a small debt of gratitude to COVID, because that bought us an extra
Silver lining.
year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, production.
Thanks, COVID.
Pushed.
Yeah, it was really a significant thing that we, you know, Rob and I have talked about this many times. Like, we had the scripts done, and then COVID happened, and we couldn't shoot, or we wouldn't shoot, and they sort of sat there for almost a year, and they, you know, to be able to have them done and then go back and look at them a year later and be able to revise them and figure them out again with that kind of time was like really significant, I think.
Just one other thing in terms of tone, I just want to give, again, major credit to Lily and Sebastian, because I just, even as an actor, the kind of transformation and the kind of setting the bar that high, you know, at the core, at the heartbeat of the whole piece, it's just kind of extraordinary. Like, it's not just emotional acrobatics. It's like the just even the nature of all of these prosthetics, I mean, on top of it, and then also an accent and dialect change and a musicality for both of them to be, I mean, it's like unheard of to be able to maintain and to sustain and believably play people who exist. So I just, that's a huge part of it.
I was also doing that, you just don't know that, because
And Seth.
Rangodier, if he was as famous, I would have been included.
Uncanny.
In
It's uncanny.
he is not, so I wasn't.
Uncanny.
But yeah.
Uncanny.
and lastly, but not least, I would like to throw his name in there, Craig Gillespie, because
Craig.
very important to sort of get this thing going, and I think he was an important part of this.
I also want to throw Andrew Dice Clay's name out there because he's become one of our best character actors. So impressive. I mean, everything from start to finish is so well done. Thank you so much for telling me this story I thought I knew.
Thank you.
Everyone, you can go home and watch the finale again tonight. It drops at 9 p.m. Thank you so much for being here.